time I let you in on a little secret. I spend a lot of time decorating in Disney Dreamlight Valley, and I basically have cracked the code on how I like setting up my biomes. So today I'm going to be breaking down that process for you from start to finish. Of course, there is no right or wrong way to go about decorating your valley. These are just the steps that I like to take when decorating my biomes. When decorating in Disney Dreamlight Valley, I find it helpful to break up the biomes into different themes. It just helps me to create a very cohesive area and make sure that when I'm walking through the area, I really like how everything looks. I like my biomes to have a very particular theme for each area. Now for larger areas, such as the biomes in the valley, I like those to typically have one theme going throughout the entire space. But for those on Eternity Isle, where it is one biome, but it is kind of split up into lots of smaller pieces, for those I tend to like to do each area as a different theme, or maybe multiple smaller areas as one theme. Now, before I get started on actually doing any decorating, I actually spend quite a bit of time brainstorming for my designs. I like to consider what kind of feel do I want the biome to have? Are there any particular items or houses that I know I want to include in that biome? And what do I imagine the world around those items or houses looking like? Of course, it's also really helpful to consider the natural aspects of the biome, such as like the grass coloring, the stones around that area. Things like the Forgotten Lands do better for creepier, darker, spookier themes. And for instance, that might not be the best biome to consider for making like a flower garden. Using online tools such as Pinterest might be able to help you with getting started for how you want the biome to feel. Once I've established the kind of theme I think I want to go for, then it's time to actually sit down and consider, do I actually have enough items or materials in game to bring this vision to life? Because sometimes I have ideas, but there's just not the right kind of tools that I think I need in game to be able to actually bring this to life. Now, that doesn't mean that if you have an idea and you don't feel like you have items, that you can't still make it happen. For instance, in my Peaceful Meadow, I wanted to have kind of like an Alice in Wonderland type feel. And although I felt like large, oversized flowers would have been a great item to use, I still felt like there were enough items in game currently for me to bring this idea to life. The next part of my design process is essentially making a mood board in game in that biome. So I'll do things like lay out some items I think I want to include, particularly large items, houses, things like that, just to see how everything is kind of fitting together. At this point, I'll also consider any possible pathing I might want to use, what kind of trees I want to use, everything that's going to help me to be able to bring this biome to life. At this point, you don't have to get too particular with how the items are being laid out in place throughout the biome. It's really just seeing how everything is going to work together. So I pay attention to things like colors, different textures, and I really just try to balance everything out between my items, the path I'm choosing, and make sure that everything is going back to that original idea that I'm trying to bring to life. Once I have this visual representation of everything I think I want to use in the biome, I'll begin to start placing the houses where I think they would look best. Typically, I like to place my buildings where they'll be most seen in the biome for the most effect. I decorate everything in my valley on Switch, so it's important for me to use larger items to help fill up the space as opposed to many smaller items. Buildings are also a great way to make the valley feel more realistic. I typically like the houses to be at focal points in each biome, so a really good rule of thumb is like when I'm entering the biome, is there going to be a house right there easily for me to see and kind of set and establish the tone for that area. There's really no right or wrong way to do this. I typically just play around with different placements of the house. Do I want to see the house from the back at all? Are there any sides of the building that I like? Or maybe if the back of the building is a little bit more boring, I might want to put it on the back of the biome so that it's not shown. I swap in between the furniture mode and as my character walking around quite a bit at this point so that I can get the feel of how it's actually gonna look. Because although I spend a lot of time decorating, the important part for how it looks is actually with my character walking around. So I like to test it out, see if there's enough room, and just make sure that I'm overall happy with the flow. So at this point, we have some of our houses or buildings placed, and I think then the next important step is to place any large items you might want to include, such as the ride items, any large rock clusters, tree clusters, things of that nature, so that you know where the pathing should go around. Maybe you want to build a farm or a pumpkin patch. For instance, in my Forgotten Lands, I built a pumpkin patch using a bunch of the automatic gardeners, and I wanted to make sure that my path would weave in between this pumpkin patch. So I had to build a pumpkin patch first, of course. So this brings me to the next step, which is determining my path placement. Again, I always swap into my player mode so that I can see if there's enough space for me to walk around in between these large items and areas that I've built. And then of course, I'm always referring back to my original idea. So this will help me to determine, do I want to have a more structured path or do I want to have a more natural path? For example, in my peaceful meadow, I want this to have a very kind of bohemian, natural garden type feel. So I like my path to be woven all throughout the area. I like it to circle around the ponds and weave in and out so that it feels very natural. Kind of like I've just been walking around and my feet have naturally created the path. Whereas in areas like my current Forest of Valor, where I wanted it to have more of a royal, elegant feel, a structured path is more beneficial because I really want it to have straight on lines and feel very manicured. I think that going back to your path choice here is important too. I typically like to use the unbordered path for more of my natural areas, and then I like to use that bordered edge path for more of my structured areas. Of course, you can do whatever you want. Sometimes I like to mix a structured path and more of a natural path. It just depends on what kind of design and aesthetic I'm going for. I do feel like I could do a whole nother breakdown all about pathing and how I set that up. So if you guys are interested in that, be sure to let me know in the comments below. But typically when I'm making more of a natural path design, I use a lot of foliage and rocks to cover up any harsh edges of my pathing. To me, this just helps the biome feel more realistic, as if the environment has started to grow around this path. And it really helps to create that lived-in look. So at this point, we have our target aesthetic. We have any large buildings or houses we want to place in the area. We also have an idea of any items or pathing we want to use, and we've started to map out our pathing, which of course can sometimes change as you actually go about decorating the area. For me, I find it very helpful to continue to test out actually walking around in the area again, just to make sure that I'm liking the pathing and everything isn't feeling too like claustrophobic. So continue to walk around a lot and see if you have enough room. At this point, I'll go ahead and add more functional items. So to me, that includes things like lighting throughout the area, any chests I want to have, things like cooking stations, crafting stations, where I want Goofy's stall to live, all things like that I start to arrange in the area. Then I start to really make the biome come together by adding in bits of decor, any little builds or areas, such as little like sitting areas, maybe something quirky related to any of the characters that live in that area. Overall, just giving it personality. Because at the end of the day, this is a really fun process for me, and that's why I enjoy decorating, and I get to bring different ideas to life. And this is a game, so it should be fun. Of course, throughout this process, I'm continuing to swap to player mode and test for playability and functionality. And then I just continue to decorate until my heart's content. If I don't like anything I did, you know what? You just delete it and you try again. If at any point I begin to feel stuck or discouraged, I'll just refer back to my original ideas that I had mapped out to help me stay on track. My decorating process does slightly change depending on what theme I'm going for. However, these are typically the steps that I follow, and I hope you found it helpful. If you need more inspiration for different ideas for decorating your biomes, watching your favorite Disney movies or using Pinterest can definitely be helpful. There's also tons of inspiration here on YouTube from different Disney Dreamlight Valley content creators to help you feel inspired. But at the end of the day, it's your valley, and anything you design should be a reflection of you. I hope that this video has helped you to get started with your design process. Take things in baby steps. You don't need to decorate your entire valley all at once, so start with one biome at a time. If you have any further questions about my design process, feel free to drop them in the comments. I hope you guys have found today's video helpful, and don't forget to like and subscribe.